Thank you very much. At this time, we'll open it up for questions. It was very clear. Oh, we have a question. Okay.
Thanks, Heike. I'm Jim Glarder from Gates Foundation. So let's say you have a new instrument system for sequencing. And it could be cross-cutting, agnostic on what pathogens it might be sequencing. And then you've got potential reagents, software, etc. And the IVD sponsor wants to do this in the least burdensome approach. So would they follow, would their instrument be subject to like a 510K level of submission with a kind of an introductory assay on that, followed by, depending on the risk categorization, let's say it's Ebola or something that has, high risk class 3, they would follow a PMA type approach. Could you just review kind of what the process might be for CDRH for brand new platforms, next generation sequencing, but in this kind of scenario?
Really good question. So we're still battling with that. I can't give you a definitive answer on how it will work. It's like I said, like it's all preliminary thoughts on how we might go about it. So our first thought is, because any of the tweaks in the pipeline could have a potential risk on the diagnostic results downstream, we want to look at the whole entire system as one. But we are aware of the want, I guess, that you could have the instrument itself, the pre-analytical part, and the bioinformatics. So we're looking at like one system versus possibly these 3 or even more components. But for us to assess safety and efficacy, I think there's going to be some data needed as the whole entire assay. It doesn't necessarily have to be cleared. But this is something that we encourage device developers or anybody that's interested to use the pre-submission process, and we can give a more formal feedback on possible approaches. But we are in the same boat with everybody else, looking at how can we ensure safety and efficacy while allowing this new technology to come through.
Good. Another question which is along the line of the questions that we just had. So, I mean, one of the properties of sequencing is that it's relatively unstable. It's not just new technologies that come in, but actually how we interpret the data will change over time. Even if we validate a new assay, say on 10,000 isolates, as we introduce this assay, we will keep on finding exceptions that cause systematic false positives or negatives just because we have a weird bug that has some weird property that we've never seen before, and that will cause issues. So the issue is that we need to constantly keep on tweaking that. And we've seen also issues in terms of how sequencing has gone in the past, where companies have not shared that data, have relied on company secrets. And how do we, on the one hand, have a system that is robust, where that balances the need for change and also transparency? I mean, it goes the other way as well. I mean, how can a bioinformatics company today say, my system is superior to somebody else's system? I mean, there's no objective way for a customer to judge whether it is better or whether it's safer.
Very, very good question as well. And I think it goes into the, like, how we could possibly modify or allow modifications of devices. Or how do we assure that the right information goes to the public? Was that the later one more? Yeah. So when we review the device, it's based on specific claims, and the performance data is all available on the website. And for certain high-risk devices, there's also post-market activities that we look at the data, and we do inform the public. And what I foresee for sequencing, we cannot clear something or prove something that we don't know what it is. So it's a conundrum for us. when a device company comes in and wants to make claims that we don't know what the organism is, like an emerging pathogen, how do we know what the performance is? So we can only look at data where we know what the organism is. But it's similar to the question that you asked, where how can we improve, I think, communications to patients? And this is something that CDRH right now has made a priority in 2016. So we are looking right now into ways of integrating patients into this information. It has been brought to our attention that that is a problem.
I have a question for Rick. Has to do with, you say it's going to be available for researchers, and so for a commercial company like ours, I could foresee using the ReSeq database for, we get a false call on an organism in a gene expert, and we look at the mutation that we missed, and we want to go in the database and see what is the implication of that. Are we going to be able to have access to it as well?
That's a good question. Right now, the process for requesting access goes through a panel, ReSeq-TB leadership panel, who reviews the reason for the request, and then we'll make an assessment and either approve or reject. That's my perspective. From a technology, building the platform, we can make it available to anybody. Marco, are you okay if I turn this over to you? I know you've dealt with some of the requests from commercial companies and how you deal with those.
So this is going to be something that is essentially freely available to anybody that has a qualified need. And so from one of the remits of ReSeq-TB has been to help developers address some of these issues that are going on. And so this is exactly a reason why we would want to use ReSeq-TB, is to help the development of newer assays. And especially, you know, as I think other people have mentioned, Claudio just mentioned, that things are going to be changing. You know, we have new drugs coming into the pipeline. We have new treatment regimens, which will put additional pressures on the bug and the bacteria. So it's going to be a changing environment. And that's what's going to be really challenging from a regulatory standpoint, is what's going to be happening today is not necessarily what will be happening in the next few years. So there's going to have to be, and I think Heike's right, a lot of sort of phase 4, just continuously monitoring and looking for some issues that happen in the field in order to be able then to sort of come back in real time and say, hey, wait a minute, we're missing a few different things. There's something else that's happening here, and it's better to take a quick look now. I don't know if you wanted to add to that.
I'm definitely a proponent for making all the information publicly available. So that's what we're trying to do with the database. Like, everything that is there is publicly downloadable. And I'd like to actually use this opportunity to ask if the community here is interested in contributing to Argos. Not like thousands of strains of one organism, but we would like to have like sort of 5 strains of each, and then possibly use that to validate or to qualify your existing genomes, and then device developers in turn can use that. That would be really useful, I think, for the community.
It's a great idea.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say it is a great idea, and the one thing that we can do, you know, since we have, 3,500 isolates, we can go in and pick. And as Jamie has already showed us, that there is some diversity in there, so that we can ensure that we have the appropriate diversity to meet your needs.
Great, thank you.
Other questions?
Thanks. Rick, I was very interested in the approach you're taking, and I applaud the intent to make this readily available. I think the big challenge is going to be the agreement and the evolution of this over time as you make it available to other external researchers. I've been in the position of having to create an analytics steering committee for the multiple requests that came to CDC to use the surveillance database at 70 years of consistent surveillance information obtained from states under a certain series of agreements, and then they took issue with anyone who took the data from us without asking the primary source. So yeah, I could see all these nuances that you're going to need to address. And I think it would be also useful for external researchers to have access to a potential list of these are the approved projects that are ongoing to avoid the potential of duplication of effort. In fact, that's part of what this analytics steering committee does. There's a repository of a huge list of projects that are underway, and if I came with a question, what they would do is direct me to the researcher who's already tackling that, rather than release the data and have possibly duplicative activities out in the field in competition with each other because the two researchers haven't spoken. So I could see also the need to try to facilitate those other transactions in real life. But, you know, at the end of the day, I think we are all here wanting to make it more available rather than cumbersome, but it comes with the series of challenges that I'm outlining based on personal experience.
So to your first point, one of the things we have today, and I touched on it in my presentation, is there's kind of a long process for getting the data into the platform and reaching those agreements. What we do is for each contributor, they define the scope of sharing that they will allow. And one of the things unique about ReSeq TB from other platforms that we've worked on is we actually allow two different levels of restricting access. So we can Yeah, sorry. Is that better?
Yes.
So we can restrict access to the raw data, and we can actually restrict access to the aggregate data, so it becomes just a private repository for that contributor. We discourage that. We want everybody to make it available in the public domain, and so far everybody has. But the other thing we can support is an embargo period where we get agreement from the contributor to allow the data to be used in aggregate, so that outcoming resistance report, the data is included in there in aggregate, but they can't actually access the individual files. And that seems to be sufficient for most contributors who have an embargo period. There may be an exception, and we can handle that, but what that means is that the data, while it's in the data platform, isn't actually available to an external researcher. That doesn't exist in ReSeq TB today, but we can handle it if it's necessary. Your second point was on the analytics available for researchers, is that right? And on that point, you know, that's where we're still learning about what different end users will need. We can make data available in a format that can be used by other analytics tools, or we can make data, we can try and build in some of those analytics to the platform. Your third point was about acknowledging the research project so that people weren't duplicating effort. We actually do have what we call a resources page in there today, where we can list anything anything a researcher would make available to us, we can list on the researchers page. I am thinking, Deborah had mentioned the TB PACS data platform, that's a separate platform, but that actually does have a page where every research project that is approved gets listed, and that would be very simple to add to this platform as well, so that's a great idea.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks to all of our speakers. Just want to end by reiterating that one of the first priorities in terms of the development of ReSeq TB was to really help assay developers in looking forward and the needs that would be there in terms of driving diagnostics development. So that's clearly one of the primary drivers behind ReSeq TB. Thanks to each of our speakers.